Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Fundamentalists podcast. My name is Elliott Morgan. I'm here with Peter Rollins. This is a podcast where we explore the possibility of life before death. We talk about psychoanalysis, philosophy, theology, psychology, biology,
Phenomenology.
typology, phenomenology. Thank you for joining us. I hope you're doing very well. If you like this podcast, feel free to like this video, subscribe to this channel, or go to iTunes. You can look it up there, as well as Spotify. There's a whole slew of new episodes for the iTunes folks that are so good, and we're having a great time. Last episode, Pete called it. Weezer did not hit as well as we were hoping it would. It turns out that, maybe we keep it a little bit more ethereal, a little bit more philosophical. So, in this particular episode, we are going to be talking about madness. But first...
The band.
The band?
Yeah, the band Madness. Do you know the band Madness?
No,
they're a British mod band.
Okay.
From like the 1980s.
Yeah, then I definitely.
Yeah.
But I know Madness, the song by Muse, is probably.
Okay. Oh, Muse.
Yeah.
Very good.
But before we dive into that, just so you guys know, if you're in quarantine right now, you're in lockdown, you're bored out of your mind, and you're like, I want to shake things up in my head, Peter does a festival called...
Oh, thank you.
Absolutely.
I didn't even set you up for this.
No,
Thank
you didn't.
That's lovely.
Peter does a festival called Atheism for Lent.
Oh, no, that's not the festival. That's the festival's Wake, and then the decentering practice is Atheism for Lent.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm very good at doing this. Atheism for Lent is a decentering thing that he does, where you decenter your assumptions about things, you decenter your belief systems, so that when you jostle yourself up, you can sort of have a new perspective on things. And who doesn't want that when everything feels like every day is running into the next day and there's no tomorrow or no yesterday? And you can get information for that at peterrollins.com?
peterrollins.com.
Well, there you go.
It's, to say something about that as well, like atheists and theists are often seen as the polar opposites. And actually, atheism and theism are intertwined in a very rich way in philosophy. And by going through this course, you'll see how they enrich each other. And I think that might also give hints about how we can find other opposing groups and see how they can interrelate. Because, say, atheism and theism, people think that they are two completely kind of opposed camps,
right,
when really, actually, they're not. So that's what Atheism for Lent explores partly.
Yeah, because you can't be. I mean, if you're an atheist, you're against the idea of a particular form of God.
Yeah, and a lot of theism is also atheistic because it rejects certain notions of God, and then it starts to get kind of very messy very quickly in a really interesting way.
Yeah.
That's
why you just become a polytheist.
That's
what all the cool kids are doing.
Is that right? Are they all? Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Join me for my talk, Polytheism for Lent. But yeah, you can check that out in the description. Now we're going to dive in. Oh, and by the way, just as an update, I have not.
Oh, I wanted to ask about the toilet.
Thank you. I appreciate you bringing that up. I didn't even prep you for that. You just brought it up, and I appreciate that.
That's good. I was thinking about you when I flushed my toilet earlier
I think
today.
about you every time I flush now, and that was not a part of this whole thing. But here we are. I haven't gotten any more new tablets because I don't want to reach into the tank and like get the blue cup.
You don't have to get them out before you put in new ones. So unless you drink from the toilet bowl.
Well, I do sometimes, but only on like Saturday nights. But like, I guess I don't have to. I could just add more.
Just add more. Yeah.
They dissolve.
They dissolve very gradually over like 3 months.
Yeah. Okay.
But you put a couple in, doesn't matter. They just dissolve very gradually.
So okay, maybe I'll get some new ones then.
Yeah. You treat yourself. Like honestly,
I need something.
Things are difficult these days. So
yeah,
that'll just lighten your day.
It truly is like the stupidest project that I really have dived into.
Mm-hmm. And you've dived into some stupid projects.
I've dived into some pretty stupid projects, I tell you. All right, well, let's talk about...
By the way, also, I apologize for the other reason why the episode might not have done well is I completely got the audio and the video messed up, and you had to put a new video up.
Oh, yeah, I had to re-upload that. I do that all the time.
I'm rubbish at that.
I should check it more, but I just don't. And like I've done the same thing with the Valleycast. I'll upload it and get it all set to go, and I'm like, I'm sure it's fine, and then it ends up not being fine.
Okay,
So it we're getting better, guys. You know what I mean? But let's talk about madness.
Yes, madness. This is my theme.
This is your choice.
Yeah, my choice. Because I guys thought it'd be an interesting topic. What is madness? We talk about
you're
madness
losing your mind.
because we're all losing our minds. Exactly. And there's a lot of, there's definitely some people are having delusional breaks because of the anxiety, and you can see it in society at large. And I'm sure we all know people who are kind of losing it, become very paranoid. Paranoia is a structure. So I thought, what is madness? Because it's easy to say someone is mad, but what does that mean? So I'll kick it off, and then we'll take it from there.
I love it.
So whenever people use the word madness, technically we're talking about psychotic delusions, right? So psychotic delusion. What is a psychotic delusion? And Lacan, who is notoriously difficult, but sometimes says something very succinct, puts something in a very, very tight way.
He was notoriously delusional?
Oh no, notoriously difficult.
See, I hear what I want to hear.
Yeah, there you go. But he had a great phrase. He said, a beggar who thinks that he's a king is mad, but so is a king who thinks he's a king.
It's great.
Yeah, which is great. Very good. And so in that phrase is the idea that madness is something to do with a failure of the symbolic, where you directly relate to some sort of rule within society. There's no symbolic distance. You think you are something. So either the beggar thinks they're a king, like they literally think that they are this rule, or even a king thinks they're a king. They fully identify. They don't see themselves as a symbolic figure, as a figure who's basically inhabiting a symbolic rule. Whenever there is no distinction between your symbolic rule and yourself, and you kind of see them as completely one, that's the sign of a delusional break. And I'll say something about Jean-Paul Sartre said something interesting connected to this. He talked about a waiter that he saw in a Parisian cafe who thought that he was a waiter. So Sartre looked at this guy and saw that he was really had all the gestures, was really acting up as if he was a waiter. And Jean-Paul Sartre called this bad faith, because he said he's not a waiter. We have all of these rules in society, but the rules don't define us. When we think we are the rule that we're inhabiting, there's something of bad faith in that.
Man, Jean-Paul Sartre would have hated Applebee's. You ever eat at an Applebee's?
I've never eaten at an Applebee's. What's that like?
It's like one of those places where the waiter like sits down at the table with you, and they're like, "Hey guys, all right, we got some crazy deals for you right now. We have this back ribs and with the fajitas and the sizzling the bread and why are you guys? What's going?" And then they like try, and you're like, "Oh, you're really like doing this whole song and dance thing."
Yes, it's that thing when you know a person is acting what they are. Yes, yeah. It's too much. That's it. But that for Sartre and for Lacan, that is not madness, because you know that you're not what you're acting, but you're trying to be it. So a psychotic individual doesn't have the distance. They don't know they're playing a role. They don't even kind of like act. They literally completely think they are the thing that they're imagining. So that's the initial thought. I did have an example of a type of... this is bad. I don't think that Jordan Peterson is necessarily psychotic, but it is interesting.
What a segue.
Yeah. I had a dream and it wasn't about my mother.
No,
it's interesting because I was reading an article came out a few weeks ago. We were talking about this earlier. I don't think you read it, about Jordan Peterson's illness and what happened. Do you know anything about this? Have you followed this
I can tell you my understanding. Okay, Jordan Peterson is definitely as close in this realm of a type of podcast that we do, probably as close as we could get to a hot button conversation. A lot of people really, really hate him vehemently. A lot of people really love him vehemently. And he is a polarizing figure, and he is also would be described, I guess, as a Jungian, because he loves Jung. And he also is very it seems to be, in my estimation, this is just my opinion, he seems to be very rigid in his ideas about certain things, which is fine. I'm curious what his new book is going to be. So I know he fell ill as a result of being addicted to pain medication, opiates.
Yeah, it's kind of an antipsychotic.
Benzos or benzene.
Yeah, benzodiazepine.
And it like came out of nowhere. It seemed like it seemed to be, no one knew that he was going through this and had been going through this, and I guess he almost died.
Yeah.
And then he like did a new book announcement about his follow up to the 12 rules for life or something like that.
Yeah.
And then that's the last thing I saw. But I find it to be a very interesting conversation. I was so into the Zizek Peterson debate, and then I was happy that Zizek, I would say, hands down, won. But
it was right after that Peterson dropped, by the way.
Disappeared. Great. So what you, I'm sure, know more. So please fill me in on what's going on, because
I'll fill you in with a bit of the background of the illness, and then I'll make my point.
Let me know. Yeah. I'm very curious.
Oh yeah, and the thing I'm going to talk about is not like pro or anti Peterson as such, but more, you mentioned why he has such a powerful kind of negative or positive draw for people, and then what might have happened to him. So anyway, he fell ill. He was on the drugs he was on were kind of antidepressants, but also I think they can be used for antipsychotics as well. But then, yes, he got kind of addicted. He went around various hospitals, eventually ended up in Serbia, and he got a diagnosis for akathisia, which is, I don't know much about akathisia, but it means you can't sit still, you're very fidgety, you're very kind of like, it can look a little bit like schizophrenia, But what happened, the interesting thing to me was he was in Toronto and he went to see a doctor, and he was initially diagnosed with schizophrenia. No, I don't know if he was officially diagnosed, but a doctor suggested it might be schizophrenia. And then they didn't accept that diagnosis. And then they traveled, I think, first to Russia, and then they went to Serbia. And then they got this diagnosis for akathisia, and kind of got treatment for that. But the interesting thing to me was this initial diagnosis of schizophrenia. Because here's the thing, right? I kind of I don't know Jordan Peterson, never met him, probably never will. But there is something I've always seen in his thinking. There's a number of elements that do remind you of a type of psychotic structure. And so the main one, there's a few, but one of the big ones is he used this analogy of lobsters once, right? The famous lobster thing, right? The interesting thing about the lobster thing was he basically said lobsters have hierarchical systems depending on their strength and their dominance or submissiveness within a biological system. And the funny thing about lobsters, if I'm right, someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they're very immersed in their environment. Like if you change the water concentration of pollution, you can kill them very quickly. Like they're very absorbed in their environment, and they've got these natural hierarchies,
like a cold-blooded bug might be.
Oh yeah, you're the zoologist.
I mean, they're a bug. They're cold-blooded. So
yeah, they're like sea bugs.
They're sea bugs. They're just big roaches that taste good.
Yeah, they taste very good. So his thing was, he was kind of saying that in society, in many ways, there are hierarchies of meritocracies, and people who are smarter or more stronger or more empathetic can take on certain rules, and that I guess he was saying that this is a good way of organizing and structuring society, kind of a type of meritocracy. But the funny thing is, right, there's obviously a few differences between humans and lobsters, but the main difference is lobsters aren't symbolic. Lobsters don't have a symbolic relation with their environment. They simply are in their environment. They have these hierarchies. Human beings are symbolic. So a human being acts certain rules, whether it's a general or a doctor or a parent or whatever it is.
Or a lobster,
yeah. In cosplay, right? We symbolically enact rules, and you just have to be good enough to be able to enact the rule. Or what were you going to say?
No.
Oh, yeah.
Please keep going, yeah.
So
I have many thoughts.
Oh,
but
good. Yeah. So the interesting thing is, as I say, the psychotic for Lacan is the one who doesn't see their symbolic rule. They fully identify with what they are. And my wonder is, I mean, the other thing about psychotics, of course, is they suffer from certainty.
I love what you're doing here, Pete.
All right, nice. This is actually where Lacan critiqued Jean-Paul Sartre, because Sartre was all about authenticity, and Lacan basically said, well, psychotic delusions are authentic. You literally think you are a king if you're a beggar, right? There is complete authenticity and complete certainty. But the other thing is, it's to say that it's a full identification with your rule. And I get the feeling that Peterson started to identify with the symbolic rule that people had created for him. Like, instead of seeing him as not the rule of people who loved him and hated him, right? But he's just a regular guy who enacts that rule, just like a priest, dresses up in a certain guise and becomes a personification of grace, right? But they're not, but they become that. Or a therapist becomes a personification of acceptance and listening. So Peterson is a symbolic father figure that some people hate and love. But I think he identified with his role as a father figure, and that probably caused too much stress. So anyway, that's my object lesson in psychotic delusion.
I am so blown away, first of all, because all of this is in my brain right now, like a Tetris game falling into place with my previous thoughts on Jordan Peterson and what you just said, because I at the risk of whatever, I like Jordan Peterson. I do not love Jordan Peterson. I do not look up to him as any type of father figure. But I do not put any kind of ill intention in what he does.
Yeah.
I also don't know a lot about him, so I might be ignorant in that regard. I can understand why people have huge problems with him, and I'm starting to understand more why people have huge problems with him. But my impression of him, when I see him in interviews and stuff, is it's hard to explain because I respect part of it, but his stoicism and his groundedness and his actual physical stillness has always sort of irked me in a weird way. There has always been a sort of lighten the hell up, dude. Relax. Why are you trying to be he almost seems to think that he's like a Freud. He kind of thinks that he's just I'm this, and it's you're something's going on under the surface. My assumption previously had been this guy must do some weird stuff in the bedroom to compensate for this weird sort of stoic, I have it all figured out persona. The idea, I'd had no idea until you said that somebody may have suggested a sort of schizophrenia, because it does seem like he is so consciously aware of making sure that he seems put together, and you clean your room, and you take care of yourself first, and you're orderly and structured. It's someone who's that obsessed with order and structure, I can only assume has elements about them that completely go against that. And it would make sense that in the hyper echelon that he is in, and under the immense pressure that he is in, that there would be some crazy stuff going on. And then you find out about antipsychotic drugs and all this stuff, and then you're oh, okay, something's up. He is trying to almost keep up, maybe based on what you're saying, with the persona,
the symbolic rule. Because this is actually a good way, we come back to this every now and again, the difference between neurotic, perverse, and psychotic in the Lacanian structure. But if for example, and not knowing Peterson at all, but if he was neurotic and he was obsessed with order, what would be going on behind the scenes is he's disordered. And of course there's a famous meme where he's very disordered in his house. But neurotics often, they promote what they're not. So a neurotic promotes what they're not, and behind the scenes they're disordered, but they're promoting it. A perverse subject gives you rules, but they see themselves as an exception to the rule. They see themselves as they don't have to obey the rules that everybody has to obey. Psychotic fully identifies with the role. They fully believe they are. And there is something, because I had to watch a lot of Peterson once, because I did a paper or a talk on him one time, and I remember watching his seminars on the Bible, and there was a couple of times where he talked about dreams, and one of the dreams he dreamt that he was brought up to heaven by God, and he had to fight the devil, and I think he basically fought the devil and he won, and then he I think he was angry at God for putting him into this fight, but God said basically, well, you're the one, you're the one to fight the devil.
You're Neo.
Yeah, you're Neo. And I remember listening and going, oh, I think he's thinking that he is who people think he is. Like, because, and that, by the way, for any celebrity, if you can't distinguish between your symbolic role and yourself, you're going to collapse. And so, I go like, I wonder whether like that was part of the collapse, is that he wasn't able to go, I'm not Jordan Peterson. Like Oprah Winfrey once said this. Oprah Winfrey once said, I need to take the advice of Oprah Winfrey. In other words, she realized that she's not Oprah Winfrey. She realized that she is Oprah Winfrey, but Oprah Winfrey is also a symbolic figure in America that she inhabits, right? She's not Oprah Winfrey. She is not at one with Oprah Winfrey.
Yeah, she's not the idealized version that has been created through an entire industry of people.
Whereas Kanye West thinks he's Kanye West.
Yeah.
So where Kanye West potentially suffers from psychotic delusion, Oprah Winfrey doesn't.
I mean, this always brings us back, to the conversation about Weezer, where Rivers went on a co-writing spree and still does a lot of co-writing with of his songs with a bunch of different. With Oprah Winfrey, and that's probably Can't Stop Partying. Probably co-wrote that with her, but he does all these co-writing things, and then in an interview in a few years ago, the recent years, the drummer of the band said that maybe Rivers should co-write a song with the guy who wrote "Say It Ain't So." Weezer's most famous song, basically, and also the song that Rivers solely wrote. And it was like, maybe you should try writing a song with the guy who wrote "Say It Ain't So." That was pretty good.
That's very good.
Yeah,
yes,
very fun.
Yeah.
But he over-identified with it, which is scary. And then but I mean, can you blame him? Because I think the alternative to over-identifying, we all know who Kanye West is and all know who Oprah is. I think if you disengage too much from this symbolic thing, then you become irrelevant.
Yeah.
Hi.
Yeah, that's a good point.
If you just completely go into your own world and you're like, I'm me, I'm not that, then no one will care about either of them.
Yes. Yeah, no, that is a good point.
Then you got to make money.
Yeah, you got to be. Yeah, you've got to have a good Yeah, because for Jean-Paul Sartre, bad faith is when you identify too much with your symbolic figure, right? And that's kind of a neurotic thing, and lots of people do that. Psychosis is whenever you completely, fully think you are it. The perverse subject is the one who can completely play the game. They completely pretend they're a judge. They know they're not. Whatever. But yeah, it is about trying to get the right relationship to your symbolic identity.
Right. What is he up to now? What's the deal? I know and I'm really curious about, because I have hope. I would hope this to anyone, regardless of my opinion of them. But it seems like he's about to release a new book that might be less rigid, less about order, and more about embracing chaos and embracing disorder and all that. Yeah. That was my impression of what he's currently
bringing a second book out. And if I'm wrong, he'll be fine. If I'm wrong, he's on the road to recovery. He's going to be back in the game, going to write some books and continue to do what he's doing. If I'm right, which I'm not even saying I'm right because I don't know, but if he does actually suffer from a psychotic structure, then he's going to collapse again, in a couple of years. But if he just has akathisia, whatever it is, then, and if Michaela's right, so Michaela, it's very interesting. So they're very, like most people, don't want this to be a purely physical thing, right? Want this to be a physical addiction, a physiological thing, not having a pathological dimension. So they very much...
Very explainable.
Very explainable, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
No big deal. He's just got some imbalances in his brain that need to be corrected,
Yes.
and it'll be fine.
And everything can be controlled through what you take into your body and what you release from your body, which, again, in our exorcism episode, but was all about... There's a lot of socially acceptable eating disorders today, right? Where people actually make a whole living out of like controlling what goes into their body, what goes out of their body. They're very into thinking about what happened with Jordan Peterson as a physiological thing that's to do with, biology and, can be fixed through diet and certain drugs. So if they're right, then he's on the road to recovery. I just go like, the pathological and the physiological are very intertwined.
What would you like to see happen?
I'd like to see him do good.
Yeah.
Or as in, if I'm right, what should he do? No.
Do you want him? Would you like him to be, not to say converted, but like, would you like to see him break through and come out as this sort of new version that can balance this contradiction within himself, or do you want to see him stay on brand and keep doing his thing?
Oh no, I would. I'd definitely like to see him change. I'm not a huge fan of Peterson, but the funny thing is, I understand his appeal because I think he critiques some things that need to be critiqued. But it's his diagnosis. I think is incorrect. So obviously, I'm more Shizakian than I am. But yeah, I would love him. I'd love to see him kind of change kind of his worldview and all that. But I don't think that's going to happen.
Pivot a little bit.
What's that?
Just pivot
a little bit. And I wondered what he thought of the Shizak debate. Like at first he disappeared straight after that, and before I knew anything, I was like, did it hit him that hard? Because although I think he was, he didn't come out looking good in that, I didn't think it was that bad, and Shizak was very nice to him. So I was like, it couldn't have been that. But then I kind of wonder whether it hit him at all, or whether, I don't know. I was interested, but it turns out, no, it was this other thing that was going on.
Well, I credit you with this, Pete, but seeing that debate was one of the few times where I've been like, if I know what you're talking about and why what you're talking about is wrong, you don't know what you're talking about. Oh. Like, if I understood even a little bit of it, because I was like, what? What is he saying? Marx and that's not what? And I was like, oh, I don't get a lot of this stuff, and I have my own little whatever about it, but like, I was like, it's like he was unprepared, and I can understand why that would potentially like be very heavy for him to deal with.
Yeah, I mean, he did go in, he went in having read the Communist Manifesto, a pamphlet that Marx wrote with Engels that was for workers. Like, it was a manifesto, it was a pamphlet and he went in having read that against one of the most important political theorists alive today. So it would look bad. I don't know, but yeah.
It did look bad, and you have to wonder about what, for someone so concerned with order and hierarchy, and you puff your shoulders up and all that, you'd have to wonder what's going on mentally that you would not prepare for something like that, if perhaps there was a little bit of fear of reading too much or stepping into something. So easiest just to read the pamphlet, get the money for the debate, and walk away from it, not knowing that it would reveal his maybe slight weaknesses, which who cares? Like, of course, who cares? Like, if he didn't know, he didn't know. That's not a big deal. It just sucks that it was propped up as this epic, like, two heavy hitters of equal weight in different areas of thought. And you're like, yeah, but like, anyone would lose any debate against someone who knows more about their subject than you know about the thing you're debating. Yeah.
Now, if he debated clinical psychology or something, that that's different because that's his area. But one of the issues is, and again, this is the certainty issue, is that whenever people are tyrannized by certainty, they think they can speak in a whole range of areas. And so they kind of think that they can speak in a type of proselytizing or authoritative way about a whole pile of areas. And that never looks good. And so,
Not a good look, man.
Not a good look. So that, it was interesting as well, because the reason why Shizak did it was because a lot of people were being drawn to Peterson because of his critique of identity politics and identitarianism, and Zizek just wanted to do it so that he would show that people who are critical of that don't need to go to the right. There's also a non-woke left. And so Zizek just gave all his money away.
And if you like Jung, you don't have to go to the right. I'm just saying.
Yeah. So Zizek, like Peterson wanted to go on the road with it, and because they made a lot of money, but Zizek just gave all his money away and said, no, just doing it once.
Yeah. Yeah, why would he go on the road? Why would he just keep being? Yeah, what is he fighting for? If there's he's not. I
mean, Zizek's been very ill, was close to death, and I think he's happy to be close to death. But all he's interested in is writing, getting his thoughts out before
really?
Death. And he's he's written some incredible books recently. Like he's as strong as he ever was. Yeah.
Man, I hope. Yeah, oof. I didn't know he wasn't doing well either.
Yeah, I mean he's doing a little bit better, but yeah, he had a bad time, and he was on the can't remember what happened, but he's just maybe he had a stroke and a few things, but just meant that he wasn't traveling. But he's still writing phenomenally.
Can I tell you about a weird thing that happened to me today that maybe caused a little bit of a psychotic break? Mm-hmm. I went to 7-Eleven to get half and half.
No, I've been to 7-Eleven a few times. The one that we used to live close to in North Hollywood.
Yeah, that's a rough one, and that's a rough one. Slightly better.
Okay.
I remember walking down to that 7-Eleven when we lived together and being like, this is very close.
That was one of your low points, is when you were going to 7-Eleven to buy shitty food.
I mean, you try living with you, man. You'll end up doing... that's not true at all. But I went to 7-Eleven, and as I was walking out, there was basically, it seemed like a homeless older gentleman coming into the store. Same time I was leaving, so I just sort of held the door open for him, and he hit me with this. He says to me, "Thank you, tough guy." And I have not stopped thinking about that all day. I've been like, tough guy. Why would
Is that a compliment or a slag?
I don't know. But it definitely made me truly look at myself through the gaze of the other, and be like, what the heck was I doing that I earned the tough guy thing? But a part of me liked it, because I was great. Like, cool, I seem like a tough guy. But also I'm holding the door open at like a gesture of politeness, and then I like looked down. I was like wearing these clothes. I was like, oh yeah, I guess this looks like a intentional outfit. Like this doesn't look like the clothes that which I guess it is because I put them on. But I'm like, it's a t-shirt and jeans. And
you're tall as well.
I'm tall, and I have dyed hair, and that also is kind of like a loud thing. I think that's my theory.
Yeah, but it's not that's not a symbol of toughness. It's a symbol.
Exactly. None of what I feel like nothing is a symbol of toughness when you look at me. But me holding the door open, thank you, tough guy. It was such a I was like, thank you, tough guy. And I understand that this person is probably dealing with their own stuff, but it was a wild.
Well,
situation.
Maybe you should just say weird things to people occasionally, and it'll just mess with them for a long time.
I kind of loved it. Yeah, I was like, that might be my favorite thing anybody's ever said to me. It also is like so funny. Like it's so funny. Thanks, tough guy. I'm like, no one wants to be considered a tough guy. I've never been considered a tough guy. So it was fast. I was like, did he just say what? It was like I felt the words falling into different areas of my brain, trying to find places to be filed under niches and words.
It's a good way to get people to like you, but it's to say things like that, to throw in a little statement that's kind of a little bit of a compliment, like funny guy, tough guy, or whatever, and people like that.
I'll try it. I don't know. Well,
there is a lot of walking around here. And there's a little bit of homelessness, and you'll end up like similar talking to people.
A little bit in downtown LA.
A little bit of downtown LA, and you get talking to people, and you see some of the people here, are definitely suffering from delusional, like a failure of the symbolic. There's completely and that's basically what madness is in terms of delusion. There's a failure in the symbolic. and then they identify fully with, like, in other words, if you know you're not mad if you think you are, like if you can distance yourself from your madness, then you're not mad. In fact, that's partly the cure for psychotic delusion, is you help the person create an artificial distance. So they're able to actually, they'll still feel certain that God's talking to them. Like you get a lot of that, right, on the streets down here. But so they'll feel that. But what you do is you introduce a little bit of doubt. So you say to me, well, God's talking to me. God wants me to do X. And then all you say is, okay, well, did God give you a time frame? And I go, well, no, right? You go, okay, so you could, work with it. It could be the next week you have to do this act, or the next 5 years. You go, but if you're able to introduce enough distance where a person can like distance themselves from their delusion, then I think some analysts would call that the neuroticization of psychosis. You're neuroticizing psychosis. You're making them question it.
That reminds me recently, as in last night, where my girlfriend has gotten the impression that our house might be somewhat haunted. And so we did the logical thing, which is to sage the place and make sure it was rid of any evil energy.
The logical thing, yeah.
Which, hey, yep. You know what? I don't know. What do I know? But when we were saging the place, there was a lot of smoke. And, I'm going around like, there's good energy coming in, there's bad energy going out. There's bad energy gone with this sage, gone.
God, I wish I had a video of this.
It was wonderful. It was so fun, dude.
It would be good fun.
It was truly very cute.
Yeah.
But then when we got around the fire alarm and the smoke was waving everywhere, I was like, and it's okay if the evil spirits want to hover around the fire alarm, because I don't want to set that off right now. So let's move past that a little bit. Yeah. I was like, it's fine. We're going to get all the evil spirits up, but they're allowed to hover around that because I don't want it to go off and I don't want it to be alarming. And it was very fun and very, very cute. Nice. And it smelled great. So
I love all that kind of stuff.
Got to enter into it.
Got to enter into it. That you ritualize things and all of that. But nine times out of 10, what we see in the world is what is within us, and and you can even spiritualize that. But what we see in ghosts or in people we dislike or people we love is some disavowed or repressed element of ourselves.
Yeah, 100%. I had this idea for a YouTube video where I was gonna go opinionless, and I was just gonna truly just burn all of my opinions. And I had this idea I was going to write out all of my opinions that I could think of from any opinion that I have. And I was going to print it out, not write it because that takes too long, but print it, cut it up, and take a pan, light all of my opinions on fire. Because I'm done. Who cares?
Yeah.
But I would not burn my beliefs. I'd keep my beliefs and then burn all of the opinions.
And how would you make that distinction between a belief and an opinion?
Well, it is. I mean, I'm a huge Jordan Peterson fan. So it's a hierarchy, right? And I think opinions are pretty close to the top of the pyramid.
Okay.
Under that are beliefs. Under that is your psychology, your upbringing, your actual, and then below that you got your unconscious and all that stuff. Right. So you keep a lot of the pyramid, but you lose the beliefs or you lose the opinions. Freudian slip. You lose the opinions because that's what people come after you for. People really care what your opinions are. So my whole hot take right now on cancel culture is not that it's bad. I think it's awesome. I just think it doesn't go far enough. Yeah. I think that we need to start going after people
cancel everybody.
Everyone. That's exactly what I'm saying.
That's very nice.
And we need to go after people for their deep rooted beliefs, and then include all the opinions. Take them all down.
Yeah, that's good.
That's just me having a fun time.
I like it.
Don't give a shit. It's very fun.
Yeah, there is a funny triangle here. So the way I break it down sometimes is there's your beliefs, there's your opinions, and then there's what other people think. So your beliefs are what you most affirm, as in this is what I think, Opinions are like, well, this is what people think, and you distance yourself a little bit, and then what other people think are, I heard this, I'm not saying it, but that is another way of disavowing what you believe. So I always look at, what do you think what does society think? It's a great question to ask people, is what do you think, what do you think the ghosts think, or what do you think society thinks? And then you find the disavowed thing that they're thinking.
What do your friends think?
Yeah, what do your friends think?
Voting
exactly,
for?
Exactly. So that's why if you give a teddy bear to a kid and say, what does teddy bear think of daddy?
Yeah.
Rather than what do you think of daddy? Hey, did we talk about the dream that I had? I won't go into details, but
Please
this
do.
is funny. I had a dream. It was weeks ago. I can hardly remember it, but I told it to you, and then you came in to the room. You were in the bathroom. You came in, and you had a knowing smile on your face. And I said, "Oh, I know what you think this dream's about." And then I did an interpretation of the dream, and then you looked at me and go, I was thinking about something completely different. So what I needed was what's called a subject supposed to know. I had to go, I knew what you're thinking, and that allowed me to say what I was thinking in a disavowed way. And then when I did the interpretation, I was like, oh, wow, that's right. Because the interpretation was, I couldn't get it. It was eluding me because my defenses were against it. But when I thought that you knew what it was, I was able, and when I was going like, it's not what I'm thinking, this is what Elliott's thinking, I was able to give the correct interpretation.
Isn't that fun?
So yeah.
I'm taking a course in dreams.
That's right.
Currently, and what I've learned, there's obviously a Jungian bent to it, but the overarching thesis of the class is that, there's multiple ways of interpreting dreams, from the idea that they're just brain goo in your head to holding on to the dream image and all that stuff. But in the most recent classes we did, they did a series of sort of like questions that you can ask and ask about your own dreams. And it was really, really interesting because basically they were going like, don't just let it go. Like, don't try to come up with some direct interpretation, because the effect of the dream can happen in just the process of retelling it, or of acting it out, or of sticking with the image, or of looking at it symbolically, of looking at it through what you consciously might be struggling with. Like, there's all these other there's all these ways of it, but it's very very fun. But what was the dream?
So it was just a dream where I was walking a friend's kid around in Belfast while they were chatting to somebody else. And
the kid was chatting to somebody else?
No, I was looking after their kid while their parent was chatting with somebody else. And it kind of like, I didn't know what it meant at all. There's a little bit more to it, but I was like, I just don't know. And then the subject's supposed to know. And this is a great thing in Lacanian psychoanalysis. The subject's supposed to know is the analyst doesn't have to know. You just have to think that they know. And then you put your thoughts into them, and then you're able to see your thoughts for yourself. So with a figure that seems to have the truth, you can come to the truth. So weirdly, you have to presuppose that there is a truth out there that someone has in order to access the truth that nobody has.
And I can probably guarantee you I was thinking about the color of your toilet water.
Yeah.
I can almost, and then you're like, you know what it is that's dream meant. And I was like, yeah, I do, absolutely.
It was so funny because like I've never been caught out so quick because I know that structure. And as soon as I did it, I was like, oh God, look at that. No, I just did it.
Very
so
fun.
Yeah, very good.
Well,
how are you feeling? How far in are we?
We're like 45. I feel like this is very nice. I feel like it's been a nice talk on Jordan Peterson, the idea of madness, psychosis, over-identifying with your symbolic role in society. I think that's all very good. I hope Jordan Peterson recovers.
Yeah.
But I mean, obviously, I don't pay that close attention to it. But
yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, one thing then I'll thought to finish on is the good enough parent, or the good enough role. Who was it? He said the good enough parent. I think it was Winnicott, right? Who said parents don't have to be brilliant parents. So every parents worry about, am I good enough or whatever. You actually don't have to be that good, because it's a symbolic rule. It's a symbolic rule, and you just have to be good enough that the symbolic function works. And it's the same with any rule within society. You have to kind of be good enough. But if you're too good, if a parent thinks they're a parent, if they completely self-identify with the role, it then becomes really bad for the parent. You've got these militaristic fathers or whatever that they literally,
I'm your father.
Yeah, you know, they become the personification of fatherhood. All these problems that all we need to do is be good enough to fulfill our symbolic roles in work, as parents, as this or as that, and it works very well. So it's the opposite of a type of meritocracy where you have to be the best. It's like, no, you just have to be good enough that the function functions.
The function functions.
Yeah. And
that reminds me of one of my favorite things that Rob Bell, I've heard him say, which is like, just give your kids as little to unlearn as possible.
Yeah.
I think that's a wonderful like piece of advice. It's like, don't try to,
Unless you take that as teach them absolutely nothing, just put them in an empty room.
Is that not what it
Don't
is?
even teach them language.
Oh, yeah.
Nothing yet. And then when they're 18, just open the door and let them out.
bye. Like dogs. Yeah, that was very fun. Well, everybody, thank you so much for listening to this episode. We hope you had a great time. Leave us a comment down below on what you think is going on with any of these conversations. And I hope you're doing very well. Next week, I'm going to tell Pete all about Crime Scene, the Cecil Hotel, the new documentary on Netflix. And we're going to talk about that.
Oh, is that the one about the woman who killed herself? Yeah, I remember I saw the video where she was definitely having a psychotic break by the looks of it. From the video, it looked like she was seeing, she was having delusions.
It's a fascinating thing to talk about through the lens of the type of stuff we talk about.
Yeah.
And it's also an interesting documentary regarding web sleuths and YouTubers. So there's all sorts of fun stuff. But we'll say that for a different time. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye.